Shri Upadesamrta. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Om Jnana Dvidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Minitam Jina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namam Vishnupadaya Acharya Singha Rupine Srimad Bhakti Pragyana Keshava Iti Namine Tati Marta Charitraya Swasitam Chapaline Jive Dukhe Sadartayo Sri Nama Premadayine Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Sri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdhaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayine Pradave Nama Madhurujjvala Pramadya Sri Rupanuga Bhakti Da Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rup Anuga Viruddha Apasiddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambodhi Padam Bhajayate Namah Namo Bhakti Vinodayo Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupayo Rup Anugo Varayate Gauravir Bhabhumistang Nittishta Sajjana Priya Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namah Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namah He Krishna Karunar Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jayatang Saratopango Mamo Mandamate Gati Matsarvasya Padambojam Radha Madan Mohana Divyat Brindaran Kalpadrumad Srimad Ratnagara Singhasanastu Shri Shri Radha Srila Govinda Deva Prashtalibhi Sevyamana Smarami Shriman Rasada Sarambhi Vanshivata Tathasthita Karshan Venukshanair Gopir Gopinatha Shri Estunaha Vrindavai Tulasidebbhavai Priya Vaikeshavasya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namah Panchatatmatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Bringa, Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nana Shastra Vicharinaika Nipuna, Sadharma Samsthapako, Loko Nam Hitakarina Tribhuvane, Manya Sharanya Karo, Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana, Anande Namatvaliko, Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghujugo, Shri Jiva Gopalako, Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghujugo, Shri Jiva Gopalako. Let us offer our most humble obeisance at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, at the lotus feet of Srila Bhakti-Rakshita Dev Goswami Maharaj, Srila Gurudev. Let us also offer our most humble obeisances at the lotus feet of the highest, the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, Sri Advaita Acharya Prabhu, and all their eternal associates. Let us also offer our most humble respects to the scripture, Sri Upadesamrta. May they bless us so as to give us the power to retain these wonderful instructions and apply them in our own spiritual life. So we are still, and by text 3, we are still reading from text 3. And the subtitle is Renouncing Material Association. Utsahan nishchaya dhairyat tat karma pravartanat sangatyagat satobrite Sharvir Bhakti Prasiddhati. Eagerness, confidence, forbearance, following the spiritual practices ordained by the scriptures, giving up the company of materialists, and following in the footsteps of the pure sadhus. These six practices enhance devotion. Renouncing material association. অসৎসঙ্গ ত্যাগ এই বৈষ্ণব আচার শ্রীসঙ্গী এক ও সাধু কৃষ্ণ ও ভক্ত আর. It is the policy of a Vaishnava to reject mundane association, such as those who are overly attached to women and people averse to Krishna Bhakti. That is a quotation from Madhya Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 22:87. There are two types of achar practice. One is Sri Shangi or Jojit Shangi, those who are attached to sensual pleasure. Another is Krishna Abhakta, one who has no attraction for Krishna, but is engaged in some other errand. We should be careful and follow the caution against these two, sense enjoyers, and those that have no relation to Krishna. This is our only practice. They may be scholars or yogis, they may be so many things, but if they are not devotees of Krishna, their association should be eliminated. So these are very strict instructions throughout throughout the scriptures we have such wonderful instructions regarding satsanga. What is satsanga? Now, one can understand why should we have satsanga. But why should the asatsanga eliminated? Now, this needs to have a special understanding. Special understanding. This, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Rishabdev is teaching his sons, hello my sons, that association of non-devotees will lead to hell. And association of devotees lead to emancipation, freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Now this is a very straightforward instruction. There's nothing that one can't understand about it. The only thing one may say is that how do we know the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee? A Krishna Bhakta and a Krishna Abhakta? That is a valid question. Because especially for neophytes, most of us are neophytes. Therefore, our scriptural understanding is very meager. Meager. Don't have much understanding of the scriptural conclusion. Now, why does always speaking about conclusion? The reason being, there are so many apparent contradictory statements in the Shastras. Take, for example, the Srimad Bhagavatam. On one side, the Srimad Bhagavatam will say that one should immediately leave everything behind, all material attachments, because the material attachments lead to fear, anxiety, and on the other hand, it is sin. One should not leave family life too early, because then one incurs the sin of neglecting one's duties. And the result of such negligence of one's duty, moral duty especially, is that he becomes a resident of hell. And like this, there are quite a few such ostensible, apparent contradictions. But in effect, they are not contradictions, because we, in our immaturity about the conclusion, instructions of the Vedas and scriptures, we're not very thoughtful. So we need the guidance from our spiritual masters. They will give us a conclusion, harmonizing these two and making us understand there are some instructions which are valid to a particular state of development, whereas others are invalid because we have not yet arrived at that state of realization. So like that, conclusion means the harmonizing and adjustment of the declarations of the scriptures to be given to the seeker according to that person's level of development. They are called conclusion. So scriptural conclusions are most important. Therefore, an acharya is supposed to be very much conversant with scriptural conclusions, and therefore is able to dissipate all doubts in the minds of the students, the disciples. So here, asatsanga tyagat a Vaishnav acara. One of the practices, and these practices, some practices can be considered redundant if one is practicing something very much which includes all the others. For example, there are 64 limbs of bhakti. Now, if one practices only 5 from these 64 limbs and neglects practicing the others in a prominent manner, then there is absolutely no fault. Because in these 5 that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave to Sanatana Goswami, all the other are included. So such is possible. So, but in this particular case, completely avoiding the association of non-devotees is not an option. It's not optional. There are some instructions which are optional according to one's level of understanding, and others are mandatory. The reason for this particular instruction being mandatory is for those who possess komal shraddha. That includes all of us. Komal shraddha. Komal means very fragile, delicate. Komal. So when the shraddha is komal, then it is very vulnerable. And since the desire for rasaswadan, this desire for rasaswadan, trying to relish mundane rasa, mundane taste, all kinds of. Each of the sense organs have their own tasty things. The ear has tasty things. There is hearing some certain type of music that doesn't have to anything to do with the spiritual sound vibration. They're useless. But there's a whole world of music which is useless. But people find it very nice, very nice. Oh. So it's with the nose, with the ears, with the eyes, with the tongue, also with the skin, tvak, it's called tvak. Wants always to touch soft, delicate things, smooth things. Doesn't want to touch tough things. So the desire to touch the bodies of opposite sex, and that is also rasaswadan. So therefore, until and unless one is rid of rasasvadan, the slightest slightest excitement, slightest cause will immediately drag the mind to material mundane taste. With non-devotees, they have absolutely no taste, attraction for the spiritual subject matter, anything spiritual, they don't have. So in their association, one possessing Komal Shraddha, vulnerable, will sometime come into their trap and become enamored. The non-devotees, they would always like to speak on non-devotional subjects. And the devotees, even those who are beginners, will have a mixture. They would try mostly to speak about devotional matters, subject matters. But could be also other mundane things like talking about one's own duties and responsibilities, which one has to fulfill, which is a part of devotional life also. So then one has to develop a certain strategy to live in this material world. And this strategy is known as Vairagya Vidya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Vairagya Vidya. What is Vairagya Vidya? What is Vairagya Vidya? Vairagya Vidya is to renounce with knowledge. One should not renounce anything and everything without knowledge. Because at some point or the other, when renunciation is done without proper knowledge, then one is not completely rid of the attraction and taste for that. Just like Krishna is saying in the Gita, Niraharasya dehina vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjang rasapyasya param drishtva nivartate. What is that? Vishaya vinivartante. In our exchange, vinivartante, exchange with this material world, and it is impossible to avoid that. So Krishna is saying, that's all right, let it be. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina, the one who is possessed of a body, it is impossible to avoid this interaction. So what? Rasavarjang rasapyatsa param drishna nivartate. Rasavarjang, one has to give up the rasa, the taste for it, not the object of taste. By giving up the object of the taste, one has still not got over the influence and attraction for the taste itself. And one may like sweets. So one gives up eating sweets. But the desire to eat sweets has not gone. So as soon as there is some excuse, immediately. So Krishna is saying, Rasavarjang rasapyas param distvani. Okay, so you like sweets? Very good. Simply eat sweets which are offered to Krishna. Because there is a higher taste. When one has experienced a higher taste, the attraction for the lower taste automatically diminishes. Vairagya Vidya, you have to know. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has propagated. Vairagya Vidya. That don't be a Falgu, renunciate. Don't be a monkey, renunciate. Making a show of renunciation, but actually the desire is very much there. So one can get rid of this when Shraddha becomes steadfast. And has got rid, not completely steadfast, but has got rid of, to a great extent, the anarthas, and is situated in Nishtha. And in Nishtha, there are these 5 different hurdles. And one of the hurdles is Rasasvada. This is sleepiness, then being diverted, concentration being diverted, unable to keep one's vow, then things which we don't want, they rise up in the heart in the form of anger and lust and greed. And finally, the attraction for mundane taste, rasa svadan. So only after that, when one is being situated properly in nishtha, then the danger of falling back is practically mitigated. So, Stri Shanga and Abhakta, Krishna Abhakta. This is known as Asatsanga. So, acara, and there are 2 types of acara. One is giving up the association of Sri Sangi or Joshit Sangi, and Krishna Bhakta. That means Sri Sangi is also repeated to Purusha Sangha for the women. A man who is very much attached to sex. For the women and for the men, the women who are the persons who are very attached to sex should be avoided. Even for the same sex, not only the opposite sex, even the same sex. If somebody is very attached to sex life, then that association should be completely avoided. And the other is abhakta, not interested in spiritual life at all. So for a devotee, and this is very important, it is said that a man is known by his company. Prabhupada gives the example. He said, show me who are his friends and I will tell you what person this is. Show me the company he keeps. And simply by seeing the company the person is keeping, I can say what sort of a character this man possesses. The test, that is the criteria, is whether he is hankering for the association of the good or for the material environment. That is the test. When there is free time for the devotee, then what engagement will the devotee choose in order to engage his time? In what? That choice is there. So if one has not developed attraction for the spiritual, and if one has not given up the attraction for the mundane, then it will always, the choice will fall on mundane association, mundane activities. Whichever way his taste progresses should be looked upon. What does he like? Does he have more and more affinity towards the sadhus and the Shastra? Is the environment progressively increasing his taste for that particular thing? That will prove whether we are making progress or deteriorating. That will prove whether we are making progress. If we always choose and have an affinity towards sadhus and the scriptures, then we are making progress. But if we are trying to avoid these, even if we don't intimately associate with non-devotees, but if we simply avoid even these things, these having affinity towards sadhus, their association, and the words of the scriptures, then it is to be understood that he is not progressing, but he is deteriorating. This is proof. Am I standing still? Am I going back? Internal satisfaction will also stand as a guarantee. I shall be my own witness from within, whether I am gaining or losing. My own understanding will stand as a guarantee. I will know, even if nobody else knows. And it is not possible for anyone else to know what is going on in my mind. Impossible. Some sentimental people think, oh, I know exactly what is saying. No, not possible. So internally, a person may be desiring some mundane taste, but externally may a show of being very renounced and pious. Therefore, it's not possible. No one other than Paramatma knows, and Paramatma gives all this information to our spiritual master. The spiritual master will know our minds because Paramatma reveals everything to him. So, what is the proof? Am I progressing or deteriorating? Am I attracted more towards the mundane environment? Am I making no progress at all? Stand still in my development? Am I regressing, going back? So all these things, the answer I will find within me. I don't need to ask anyone. If I'm feeling a sense of satisfaction, yes, I have made some progress. Yes, my attraction for the association of sadhus is more than my attraction for associating with non-devotees. Also, I am no more so critical, because if I was critical of sadhus, I will not seek their association. It is my false ego which continuously finds fault in others that keeps me from associating with sadhus. So I will get the guarantee on my own. So here is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Maharaj quotes. Bhakti hi parishanu bhavo viraktir annatya chai satrika kala prapadyamanasya yathasnatah syus tushti pushti kshudapayo nughasam. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and and detachment from other things. These other things means other things not related to Krishna. And detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Lord. In the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. What a wonderful analogy. No one can know the nourishment I'm experiencing. No one can know that my hunger is mitigating. No one will know that I'm experiencing the nourishment and strength and vitality. I don't need to ask anyone. In a similar manner, bhakti, devotion, paresh anubhavu, para isha anubhavu. Para means supreme, isha is controller, the supreme Lord. Anubhava, experience, anubhava. The more I'm experiencing the presence of the Supreme Lord. And virakti. Virakti means apathy, tastelessness. Virakti. Annatra. Virakti, annatra means anything that has no connection to Krishna consciousness. Cha esha. Thus, these three things happen simultaneously. Ekakala. Tushti, pushti, kshudapaya. Tushti, satisfaction, pushti, nourishment, and kshudapayo, the mitigation of hunger, the pangs of hunger. When a man is very hungry, he feels some vibration in the stomach. pangs. They start making noises. So with each bite and mouthful, these three things happen simultaneously. In Bhagavatam it is mentioned how we should measure our progress. A mundane example has been given. When we are hungry, we take food, and when we take food, three things occur simultaneously. What are they? Tushti, pushti, kshut, apayo. When we are hungry, we feel uneasiness, and with every morsel we take, the uneasiness is removed. When we are hungry, we feel weakness. With every morsel of food, gradually the weakness is removed. And kshut, apayo, when we are hungry, we feel the pain, and that also disappears step by step with every morsel. Similarly, when we are progressing in our spiritual life towards the divine, we shall experience three things and we are to measure them carefully. What are they? Bhakti, Pareshanubhava, and Virakti. Bhakti means a serving tendency, and our attraction increases with acceleration. Bhakti means serving tendency. One has to understand there's a difference between serving tendency and actually executing a particular service. There's a difference, very fine difference. One may execute certain devotion or service, but has no real attraction for it. Is doing it out of a sense of duty. Still, it's okay. It's better than not doing it at all. But doing devotional practices for the sole purpose of reaching our final goal of the lotus feet of Krishna and executing devotional service out of a sense of duty, there's difference. And we can know this. As soon as we are able to judge, we know that one who has a service attitude, there's a serving tendency, then even if one is given a service which is very challenging, still that devotee will try utmost. Failures may be there. Failures in executing devotional service is actually no failure. Devotional service is an activity with zero failure. Even if one is not successfully completing a devotional task, still, even an incomplete devotional task is perfect. Whereas any other activity, if it is not completed, then the entire endeavor which one has applied is gone to waste. Simply a waste of time. Simply a waste of time. So, the serving tendency is what is required. And that can come with proper knowledge. Proper knowledge. What is that knowledge? Not knowledge by reading Shastras, that is also there, but by reading Shastras and hearing, one cannot assimilate knowledge. One has to assimilate. To see the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Sutta Goswami is telling the assembly because in answer to their question, because in the assembly of Naimisharanya, 5 questions were presented to Sutta Goswami by the sages. The first one was, what is the prime duty of one who has received a human birth? What is the prime duty? Dharma. What is the prime dharma? In reply, Srila Sutta Goswami is saying, Sa vai pungsa parodharma. Sa vai pungsa. Pungsa is human beings. Sa, thus, in answer, sa, thus. Vai means certainly, without a doubt. There's no question of placing a counter argument to this. That is the meaning of vai. You either accept it or you go away. There's no debate about that. This is vai, certainly. Savai pungsa, human beings. Paro dharma. Paro means the highest. Highest duty, highest religion. Dharma is also religion and duty. Savai pungsam paro dharma jato bhakti adhokshaje. Jato bhakti adhokshaje. Is to develop bhakti for adhokshaje. Adhokshaje means the Supreme Personality who is beyond the grasp and perception of the mundane senses and thoughts. Adha akshaja. Akshaja means imperishable, inexhaustible. Adho, above, beyond, transcendental too. Adhokshaja, the Supreme Lord. So Vaipungsa parodharma jato bhakti adhokshaje. Ahaituki apratihata. Ahaituki apratihata. And what is that? What type of dharma is that? And that dharma is ahaituki, causeless, mundane, without any mundane cause. Ahaituki apratihata. Uninterrupted. Uninterrupted like the flow of honey. Yato bhakti adhokshaje ahaituki apratihata nijatma suprasidati. And this alone can make the Atma here is used to convey the meaning of all 3 identities. My physical identity, my subtle physical identity, and the soul, Atma. Prasidati, suprasidati. And then in this way, we can actually establish our understanding of what real dharma is. So bhakti uh, executed with this understanding is actual our dharma, our actual. And this reveals the Supreme Lord. Parishanubhava means some sort of accurate conception of the subjective world, superseding my subject on the side, superseding the subject on the other side. At first, our conception may be hazy, but gradually it will become clearer. So, Parishanubhava means some sort of accurate conception. Now, what is the meaning of? Because we have not yet experienced the spiritual world, therefore, our conception of the subjective world, spiritual world, superseding my subject on the other side. And the other side means my subjective world in the material world, superseding it. It will become gradually clear. At first, our conception may be hazy because we have not visited the spiritual world, but it is there. And my subjective world that I have out of illusion created for me here in this material world is actually in effect a shadow. It's not real, but it is certainly the shadow of something which is real. Without something being real, there cannot be a shadow of that thing. So the spiritual world exists, that is the reality, and my subjective world in this material world is actually a shadow. Virakti, we will withdraw from the environment and feel disgust with the stale experience of this world. Punascharbita charvananam, stale experience. We have done this a million times. In this lifetime, as well as in many other lifetimes, we have done the same thing. Ahanidra bhai maithunum. Ahanidra bhai maithun, we have done a million trillion times. So, at one stage, we will, when bhakti reveals the conception of the spiritual world, maybe a slightly vague, but some accurate conceptions are there. It becomes the reality, and we understand that this material world is the shadow. And at that time, we will feel disgust with the stale experience of this world, not the world itself. The world is the creation of the Supreme Lord. There's beauty abound. But our experience of trying to exploit this material world will become stale experience. The negative side loses its charm as the positive side gives us a peep into the world of supersubjective. Bhakti, Parishanubhavo, Virakti. These three things must be there when we are making our journey. Questions? Hare Krishna. So if Krishna so desires, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Srila Prabhupada blesses us. We shall get to hear Harikatha once again tomorrow. I thank you for your patient hearing and beg forgiveness for all the mistakes I have committed. Let us once again offer our most humble obeisances at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, at the lotus feet of Srila Bhakti Rakhak Sridhar Goswami, Prabhu, Gurudev. Let us also offer a most humble respect, obeisances to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and his eternal associates. Let us also offer our most humble respects to the scripture, Sri Upadesamrta. Hare Krishna and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.